When it comes to using a small loop antenna for transmissions, well, it's a completely different story than using it for reception. You must tune it, get it to resonate, and you must also impedance match it. Something which is easier said than done. Hello, and welcome back. Today, I want to continue looking at the small loop antenna by analyzing how such a structure works and how it needs to be built so it can be used for transmitting signals. So if you're curious about that much more, then keep watching. Now, I need to point out that for most transmitting endeavors, especially on the ham bands, you do need a license. It's not that difficult to obtain, but it's a mandatory step. Anyway, getting that out of the way, let's continue. So let's start by looking at the loop antenna's equivalent model. This is built from an inductor in series with the radiation resistance and the loss resistance, and these elements are in parallel with the self-capacitance. Usually, to change the loop's resonant frequency, you will also be adding in an extra variable capacitor, so the whole assembly will have a defined but adjustable resonant frequency. Now, the structure has the behavior of a parallel RLC circuit, so the impedance peaks at resonance. Therefore, to be able to drive this thing with a typical 50 ohm signal source, you do need some sort of impedance matching. And for this purpose, there are multiple ways to do this, and I found three main ways this is achieved. First, you can treat the inductive part like a transformer and just tap into it. The common way of doing this is by connecting one part of the feed line to the middle of the loop and use gamma matching with the other end. For this implementation, your resonance tuning capacitor is located at the other end in the center of the loop. Another way is also based on transformers, so use purely magnetic coupling. With this, you just feed a signal into a small winding, which then couples to the larger loop. This is commonly implemented as two separate loops, a large one with the tuning capacitor, and a small one into which you feed the signal. And finally, you have capacitive coupling, where you use an LC type of impedance matching circuit to convert the low impedance of the source to the loop's high impedance. Here, for the resonance adjustment, you commonly use a split capacitor so that the feed can be unbalanced when it's tapped into the center of this. Now, for all of these, there are multiple variations and implementations, but these are the main operating principles. Also, it's important to reiterate that any of these will work for both transmission and reception. But while for reception, impedance matching and resonant frequency tuning is a nice to have, for transmission, these are both mandatory characteristics. Now, for today, I will be looking deeper into the capacitively coupled loop antenna, since this is the one that I ended up building. The reason I chose this design was that all of the electronics neatly fit into a single box, and this also allows easy tuning of both impedance and the resonant frequency. Now, as with any good circuit, there are a few ways to get it to work, but a lot of ways in which it doesn't. So let's now analyze this design in a bit more detail. Now, one of the first mentions of the capacitively coupled loop antenna that I found is in the 1967 edition of the Electronics magazine. So here, at page 111, this circuit is described by Kenneth H. Patterson as a piece of military kit. So this type of antenna is also known as the Army loop. Now, the circuit that Patterson describes uses a different arrangement of parts, but it still relies on the capacitive impedance matching technique. However, what I ended up building is best described, among other places, on the VK3IL blog. So I'll be leaving links to both of these below, just so you can study them in more detail. To better understand the circuit, let's look at it in the circuit simulator first. So in principle, the circuit starts off with a 50 ohm signal source, which is connected through the first variable capacitor, the impedance matching capacitor, to the loop itself. So this one has a split variable capacitor, the resonance tuning capacitor. Now, the only component here which is fixed is the inductor and the resistance, which is based on the loop size, and therefore these two are constants. But the various capacitors are always variable. So if you play around with the values a bit, there are a few things you can notice. So if we step the value of the resonance capacitor, I use the dot step function for this, we can observe the voltage present on the loop and the various frequencies at which it peaks. So the resonant frequency changes quite a bit with a relatively small change of the capacitor. But even so, if we look at the incoming signal, we can see that the circuit is pretty well matched. We are very close to the -6 decibel point in almost all of our cases. On the other hand, if we now leave the resonance capacitor fixed and we play around with the impedance tuning capacitor, first of all, if we look at the loop itself, we can see that we are still getting a small impact on the resonant frequency, so the two functions are not completely independent. But at the same time, if we look at the incoming signal source, while yes, the signal is impacted by the matching capacitor's value, in general, the exact value does not need to be as accurately tuned as the resonance capacitor. So this capacitor is sometimes considered quite forgiving. Anyway, the last thing to observe is that the matching capacitor's value is usually much smaller than the tuning capacitor value. So with this simulation, where we are pretty well matched, we can see that we are almost 10 times smaller. So this will be something important to know when choosing the exact components to build the circuit. Now, transmitting loop antennas are known to have two major problems. First, the efficiency is supposed to be pretty low, and second, you will need very high voltage rated components to build it. So let's now analyze these two topics. So what I have here is a table in which I will be applying some calculation formulas to highlight the two concerns. So we start off from some fixed parameters like loop diameter and wire thickness. So what is the loop made out of? Here I set 75 centimeters and 1 centimeter. So this would be a loop made out of some pipe or thick coax. And well, from these two, we can already determine some intermediate parameters like the loop area and the loop inductance. From here, the various calculations are performed for the major ham bands, starting from the 160 meter band up to the 10 meter band. So first parameter of interest is the radiation resistance. This is only impacted by the loop area and the wavelength of the signal we're talking about. So while a resonant dipole has somewhere around 73 ohms, a loop of this size will go from, well, micro ohms up to a maximum of about half an ohm at 28 megahertz. While this can be problematic by itself, the next important parameter to consider is the loss resistance. So what is the AC resistance of the loop? And this is mainly impacted by the skin depth and the material out of which the loop is made out of. So at the various frequencies at which we're interested in, we can see that this loss resistance goes between 20 something up to about 100 milliohms. Finally, just to make the calculation a bit closer to reality, in the total resistance calculation, I also did in a fixed resistance of 50 milliohms, just to account for things like solder joints, connectors, and dielectric losses. So this will be the total resistance of our loop. And while the efficiency has to do with the ratio of the radiation resistance to the total resistance. And while looking at the various numbers, this highlights our first issue. The loop efficiency can be extremely low, so a loop of this size will be mainly useful in the upper part of the HF bands. And well, even there, the results will be limited. So if we start off from around 5 watts of transmitted power, only a maximum of 3.8 is actually transmitted on the 10 meter band. Anyway, continuing our calculations, we can determine the RMS current running through the loop, which is dependent on the total resistance and the power that's being delivered to it. So even for 5 watts, we are talking about quite a few amperes. So this is what most interconnections and the resonant capacitor will be exposed to. Now, knowing the loop inductance, we can work out the reactance that it has at resonance, and from this, we can also determine the capacitor that is needed to actually get the loop to resonate at our frequency of interest. So this is the value that needs to be provided by our external variable capacitor. And while we're on the subject of this capacitor, we can also calculate the voltage to which it will be exposed to during operation. So for this, we need to know the current that runs through the loop as well as the reactance. And well, from this calculation, we can see that in most cases, we are talking about something in the neighborhood of a kilovolt, at least for this specific use case. Higher powers will require higher voltage capacitors. Now, just as a side note, all of these calculations are valid regardless of your coupling method. These only refer to the loop's inductance and the resonant capacitor. So, whatever you're building, you will still have limited efficiency, and your capacitor will still need to be high voltage rated. So, while it is true that the small transmitting loop antennas can be built and used quite successfully, the important aspects to consider are that the efficiency will be limited, the loop will mostly work in the upper parts of the ham bands, and component-wise, especially the resonant capacitor, needs to be very high voltage rated. So let's now continue analyzing our circuit in the simulator a bit, just to confirm all of the critical parameters. So for this, I set up a transient simulation using a capacitively coupled loop with the split resonant capacitor. And this is supplied from a 5-watt signal source. And just to make sure that the results are as expected, I also had to edit the simulation command to include a minimum time step. So 500 picoseconds did yield the expected results. So anyway, if we now run the simulation, we can see that our 44.6 volt supply is providing about 22.3, so half. Therefore, the signal source is impedance matched to the circuit. And if we look at the currents, so the current running through the matching capacitor is relatively small at around 450 milliamps. But if we now look at the current running through the loop, we can see it's a completely different value, with peaks reaching around 6.5 amperes. Now, looking at voltages, starting off with the complete voltage over the resonant capacitor, we can see this is about 1.5 kilovolts, so 3 kilovolts peak to peak, and while each half capacitor sees about half of this, at around 700 volts. And this is also the value that we get if we check the matching capacitor. So, as a rule of thumb at least, we can say that all three of these capacitors need to be rated for more or less the same voltage. Now, our calculations were giving us smaller values, but that is only because those were RMS values. What we're seeing here are peak values. Now, the last thing to notice is that while the transmission line coming from the signal source to the matching capacitor is 50 ohms, you have relatively low current coming here at a relatively small voltage, but the piece of transmission line after the impedance matching capacitor, while it sees the same current, the voltage is much higher. So this bit of transmission line is of higher impedance. So this piece still sees half of the loop voltage. Therefore, it needs to be treated with special care. So it was time to try and build such a device. Though one problem is to be noted: the variable high voltage capacitor. This is not a very common component. I ended up using a couple old capacitors from some vacuum tube radios, but I did see that quite a few people use either homemade capacitors or dedicated vacuum variable capacitors. Regardless, to get the expected results, the capacitor needs to be high voltage rated. Anyway, the circuit I built is constructed from two main parts. First, the resonant variable capacitor has 4 capacitors, 2 of low value and 2 of higher value. The low value ones I permanently connected, while the high value ones are added using a switch. With this, the idea was to make 2 frequency ranges, a high and low range. Then this assembly is connected using thick wires to a couple of UHF connectors, and the actual loop is connected to this thing. I used some thick coax cable, and the loop itself is made from the outer shielding of the coax. Then the resonant capacitor is connected to the matching capacitor Here, since we mainly need small values, I connected the two low capacitance elements in parallel. So this gives a maximum of about 60 picofarads to play with. And finally, this is all connected to the feed line using a balun, some 50 ohm coax put over a ferrite ring. And all it all fits nicely into this box. To make the first tests and adjustments of the loop, I connected it to the VNA set to show standing wave ratio. So I plotted the entire HF band, and the scale of the SVR goes up to very high values. So obviously you will never want to see something like this, but it is helpful to check the untuned loop. This setup helps to put the resonance frequency into the right place, and then to adjust the matching capacitor until you are close to what you actually need. I found it quite useful to then have a second range set where I am close to the intended frequency and with a much smaller SWR chart. With this, we can clearly see what is needed for fine-tuning. So usually with such a setup, while it is quite fiddly and it's very sensitive, you can still get a standing wave ratio below 2. So now the big question is, does this thing really work? I mean, it should, but does the device that I built actually work? To test it out, I did what all the cool kids are doing nowadays. Tried me some FT8. So I got a low power transceiver that can be hooked up to a computer using a USB adapter, fired up WSJT, and well, started trying to respond to calls and make CQ calls myself. Now, one of the nice things about modern ham radio, and especially the digital modes, is the possibility of reporting and tracking where your signal actually arrives, even if you're not getting a response. So I also used the PSK Reporter website to check the signal strengths and distances that my transmissions were reaching. Now, I did try multiple bands, and at each change I had to go and readjust the antenna. It's not all that fun after the first couple of times, but it is a necessary step. Regarding the results, I got the best values on the 12 and 15 meter bands. So here, my signals covered a few thousand kilometers of distance. I also tried both above and below, but without too much success. Maybe the time of day or some other reason was to blame. Anyway, doing this yielded my first QSO with someone I didn't previously know in real life. So I answered the CQ call on the 12 meter band and got a reply. This was quite a nice outcome. I'll be playing around some more with the antenna in the future, but it's sufficient to say, at the moment at least, that it works. In the end, while I did not get a chance to use this antenna all that much, there are already things that I would like to change. So one modification I was looking at was changing the impedance matching capacitor with a set of switches and fixed value capacitors. And the other was to somehow connect a motor to remotely control the resonance tuning capacitor. I'll probably create a follow-up video at some point if the experiments are successful. But regardless, the transmitting small loop antenna does work, and if you mainly focus on the higher frequency range, it can produce quite good results. So, with that said, hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, there are more similar videos on my channel that you might want to check out. And if you want to be up to date with my latest releases, also consider subscribing. See you next time. Bye bye.